Thank you for joining us. It is great achievements and breakthroughs in human history and the research leading up to them that brings out the very best in us. The most important conference on human age reversal just took place for the third time in San Diego, California, and over 1,000 people attended this Revolution Against Aging and Death conference, the largest age reversal event ever, with Bill Faloon, the co-founder of Life Extension, giving a keynote speech on scientific breakthroughs on inducing age reversal. Bill just returned, and we'll join him for his update presentation.
Life Extension magazine brings you new discoveries in health and anti-aging. Our science-based research and supplements are so advanced they're many years ahead of the medical mainstream, with quality control standards that exceed FDA mandates. Life Extension has covered groundbreaking medical research for more than 35 years. For your health and future, you deserve the best. Learn more at lifeextension.com.
Thank you for the kind words, Neil. I think a lot of people here have known me for a number of decades. For those who don't know me, I've dedicated the past 41 years to identifying technologies aimed at enabling people to live longer in good health with no upper longevity limit. For the first time in my history, or the history of medical science for that matter, I'm able to cite a peer-reviewed study that was published earlier this year showing that Americans are slowing their rate of aging. And what we've been preaching for the last 40-plus years, that aging is something that's controllable, has now been validated in a very large epidemiological study. It's showing that Americans as a group are slowing down the clock of aging. They are not suffering the pathological consequences that our fathers and grandparents had to deal with. We're slowing it down so much that just over a very brief period of time, from 1988 to 2010, men have decreased their biological age over 4 years, women over 3 years. And what should impress this congregation more than anything else is that the degree of age delay, the decrease in aging, has a lot to do with modifiable health behaviors. And guess what? That's what virtually every one of you in this congregation is involved with every single day. You watch what you eat. You get some physical activity in. You're involved in some of the more aggressive approaches using the drug metformin. You're taking care of your health, and you're getting a big reward. You are decreasing your biological age. Bear in mind, this data reflects a sampling of the entire American population. It includes people who do not take care of themselves. But even these individuals are benefiting from technological advances. They're getting on medications that is decreasing their rate of aging due to type 2 diabetes, due to hyperlipidemia. They are doing a whole lot to benefit. And what they looked at in this study are blood tests that you all have done on a consistent basis. Lipids, glucose, C-reactive protein as it relates to inflammation, breathing capacity, bone marrow function. And these are the measurements that they used to validate that we, as an entire population, are slowing our rate of biological aging. This is the first study ever amongst an entire sampling of Americans showing that there is a delayed rate of aging. Fantastic news for us. We've been talking about it for over 40 years, and it's finally happened. But what does that translate into? Well, heart failure, huge cause of people dying. And starting in 1995, going up to 2014, that's only 19 years, you had a 44% reduction in sudden death rates amongst heart failure patients. Now, a lot of that has to do with what conventional medicine has done and also alternative medicine. The combination of the two has resulted in a large decrease in a leading cause of age-related death. Dementia. Everyone talks about in the media that there's nothing we can do about Alzheimer's, there's going to be an epidemic of it, and there's no way to slow it down or reverse it. They're all wrong about that, by the way. But the great news is there are 4 independent published studies that reveal that people who take care of themselves are not becoming demented the way that typical people are who abuse their bodies throughout their life. These 4 independent studies show that the prevalence of dementia is sharply decreasing. That doesn't mean there isn't more people with Alzheimer's, because there's more elderly people, but the actual prevalence of Alzheimer's and vascular dementia is plummeting dramatically. And it's plummeting because, well, we're taking better care of ourselves. And that includes guarding against heart attacks. We reduce our risk of heart attack, we reduce our risk of ischemic stroke, and we reduce our risk of Alzheimer's disease. In other words, what we are doing to protect our cardiovascular systems is translating into marked reductions in dementia incidences. These are 4 independent studies that I showed you in that previous slide. 4 independent studies confirming that the prevalence of dementia is decreasing, and what we do has a lot to do with it. And these are some of the overlooked risk reductions for losing our mind. The dementia, it can be caused by people not replacing their hormones, by eating poorly. And people at this church, we're watching what we eat. We're taking care of ourselves in ways that we're protecting our neurons the way we are our cardiocytes. Now, I put this slide up about a year ago showing that a study done in the Journal of the American Medical Association, published in 2017, showed that between 1980 and 2014, the number 1 cause of death, heart attack, declined by 50%. That's a 34-year period of time. It's trivial when you look at how long mankind has been around, but over that 34-year period, a 50% decline in the number 1 cause of degenerative illness and death. Well, some researchers at the University of Washington wanted to depict this on a map. And this is a 15-second video I'm going to play for you. This map shows baseline, 1980, lots of heart attacks, lots of strokes. Number 1 cause of people dropping dead. And the blue areas show parts of the country where there are reduced numbers of heart attacks and strokes, and the yellow and orange are showing areas of the country where there's more prevalence of heart disease. So what I'm going to do is play this for you right now, and what you're going to see over a 34-year period is the entire country converting more to the blue and dark blue color. This represents a progressive decrease in death rates from heart attacks. This is really magnificent that over 34 years we've been able to accomplish this much with the most common killer of aged people. I'm going to show this one more time. Again, this is baseline. 1980, lots of heart attacks, lots of strokes. No one really thought that it was going to go away. And yet technology emerged. People started taking care of themselves, and over the 34-year period of time, the country slowly starts to turn blue. And you can see the whole country, even in areas where people don't take as good of care of themselves as they should, the heart attack death rate declined very, very dramatically. And there are a number of factors that have to do with that you all are engaged in right now. And we have talked about the prospect of age reversal in many, many publications, that the animals are deriving benefit by reversing their aging process, and humans are too. This is what we're seeing. Now, the media, they're picking up on lots and lots of laboratory research where they're seeing the animals are reversing aging or living longer in response to interventions. Some incredible news released this year. FDA has approved the Mayo Clinic to produce billions of stem cells and use them in clinical trials to see if they cannot reverse biological aging in people or cure or alleviate chronic disease. These are really major breakthroughs. American Association of Retired Persons, April 2018, their magazine reads like an alternative health journal. They're talking about the science of enabling people to live longer and healthier, and advocating that their members maybe plan for a lot more opportunities in the future because they're not going to die on schedule. And National Geographic, they talked about our prophet of this church, Nikolai Fedorov, talking about physical immortality, people living for indefinite period of time. We've got the mainstream media picking up on what started in this church in 2013 and what started with my various groups back in the 1970s. That is, advocating for the science to advance so that we all live long and outrageously healthy lives. Now, Popular Science did an investigative report. They were at this church. They interviewed me in many locations. They interviewed research scientists, and they did a fantastic article about the prospect of aging being a reversible condition. They interviewed scientists at Harvard, Mayo, Scripps. They went all over the country interviewing these scientists who all said, yeah, we're reversing aging in animals, and we think we'll start doing it in people soon. Now, the scientists didn't believe in immortality yet. They didn't believe quite that would happen, and that's okay. So they portrayed me as the forever man, and I was featured in the article more than anybody else, because when the scientists said my technology isn't going to enable people to live forever, I rebutted, well, it's going to enable us to get to an era when people will live very long, productive lives. And George Church, his research continues to indicate that if we can just live long enough, we may have a legitimate cure for biological aging that renders everything else we're doing perhaps obsolete. If we can edit our genes in such a way that we put them back into a youthful state, we could theoretically achieve biological immortality. George Church has that objective. He plans to start using his CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology on 12-year-old dogs. And if it works on dogs, he plans to be one of the first people to self-experiment with this CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology. He's getting a lot of favorable coverage by a lot of prestigious media sources. They think he may hold the key to people finding a way to eradicate biological aging. He's a Harvard professor. He's got a good source of funding, by the way. That's really good news. He's got money, he's got credentials, and he's got technology that may enable people to live for a long time. Now, you've probably read in a lot of different places that the billionaires in Silicon Valley are putting money into age reversal research. And this is an absolute fact. These young people who have made billions of dollars doing the impossible, they are putting big money into research. The problem is it may not occur fast enough. They're younger than us. They don't have the sense of urgency that we do. The Google founders, well, they are determined to find a solution to make aging a manageable condition. They set up a company called Calico 5 years ago. Actually, around the same time this church was founded, the Google founders set up a research entity to try to uncover ways to slow down or reverse biological aging. Now, the breakthrough news is they've made a huge commitment with a big pharma company to develop anti-aging drugs. They're putting over $1 billion into this project to discover drugs to enable people to age better or maybe not age at all. Now, the problem with Calico and Google is, well, their age is around 35, 38 years of age on average. They don't have the sense of urgency that I do or that most people in this room do. We need to accelerate these technologies faster, because I hate to say it, 9 years from now, some of us won't be here if we don't intervene into our aging process. And what happened the week of RAADfest, literally the week of RAADfest, September 17th, 2018, we're talking just a couple weeks ago, the Journal of the American Medical Association published 3 viewpoint articles about slowing and reversing biological aging. I didn't think this would happen for another 5 to 8 years. But they picked up on the science. The science is irrefutable, that when you give older animals certain medications, those animals have their rate of aging slowed. They have their risk of disease reduced, and in some cases, those old animals grow biologically younger. So JAMA published information, these viewpoint articles by leading scientists talking about people living a real long time. And this was the most pessimistic of those 3 articles, by the way. This is a Dr. Olshansky. He's a research scientist. He does believe that we're going to improve our health span. He's rather pessimistic about how long, though, that will make it. He's looking for people to live to be 90 to 100 in good health. And I'm looking for people to live 90 to 100 in good health and then go on to 200 or 300 after that. But nonetheless, he's talking about the fact that we should celebrate and recognize the achievement of life extension that has occurred from 1900 to today. Because it's truly been remarkable. In 1900, the average person lived to be 47 years of age. And half of that 47 years was spent typically in a state of chronic pain. Just imagine heartburn, esophageal reflux. Well, there were no antacids or proton pump inhibitors to temporarily take care of that. Injuries that were not able to be repaired. Infectious diseases. That 47 years you lived to, on average, in year 1900, they weren't all good years. And yet, we've been able to accelerate our lifespans by using technology to intervene. This was one of the more favorable articles. Talked about rapamycin and metformin combined, perhaps adding 20 more years to the healthy human lifespan. Now, this has never been published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They are a conservative group. They wait for hardcore evidence to manifest before they usually publish an article. And yet, in the September 17th issue of JAMA, they're talking about people extending their lifespans by 20 years, utilizing technologies that you've heard about in this church. You heard about it the first talk I gave, about the need for us all to consider metformin. And we've also talked about rapamycin. And there's many other interventions I'm going to talk about during this talk. Now, this is what I presented at RAADfest as a stair-step approach to us, everyone in this room, reaching year 2030. The CRISPR-Cas9 will be perfected, and then aging itself will become a manageable condition. If we manage it right, we'll never have a problem. And so what we put there as step number 1 is rapamycin, followed up by NAD replacement, senolytic therapy, young plasma. And if we do all that, we make it to the year 2030, CRISPR-Cas9 edits our genes back down to a youthful profile. We're young forever, at least biologically. That's a fantastic, fantastic projection, and yet it's realistic. Now, we've altered that a little bit since RAADfest. We're thinking at this point that if you're on metformin, if you're intermittent fasting, if you're calorie restricting, if you're boosting your AMPK through different means, you may not need to start with the rapamycin. You might want to start with the NAD replenishment, which I'm going to talk about. And as it relates to immortality, as you know, popular science referred to me as the immortal man. Well, if we are able to live to 2030, aging becomes manageable. We then knock off the diseases that are still out there killing us. We then look at protecting ourselves against accidents. We want to make sure we make it into the singularity when our neocortex will merge with the cloud. And at that point, through the transhumanist theory, we will achieve total immortality. Whether we want to retain our biological bodies or not, that will be an option. Now, the technologies that we're going to recommend represent nothing more than tourniquets compared to what's going to happen in 2030 and 2050. But guess what? You leave this church tonight, get involved in an accident, and you're hemorrhaging, and you're going to bleed to death on the scene, and someone takes their belt off and wraps it around your leg and stops the bleeding. That's a tourniquet, gets you to an ER room where they can save your life. And you walk out of that hospital in a couple days as opposed to going to the Broward County Medical Examiner's office and being autopsied and being dead forever. So tourniquets do have a role in being able to enable difficult challenges to be overcome. Our challenge is putting the pieces together. We know of multiple interventions that we think can slow down or reverse aging, and most of these are available right now. We want to put them together in a sequential order. So our age reversal battle strategy is to investigate what may be out there, validate it in people who are utilizing it, and then disseminate the information to you so that you know what's working, what's not working, and how well some of these age reversal interventions are working. So it's critical that before you engage in any meaningful age reversal intervention, you get a lot of blood tests done so that we see where you are. And I can tell you a real sad story. Somebody spent a lot of money. They went down to Panama for some aggressive stem cell replacement therapy, and they came back. And they then emailed me with their blood test results saying, I'm not sure if I've improved. I said, well, where are your baseline? Oh, I didn't do a baseline. This person spent over $21,000. Does not know if he benefited or not because he didn't do a baseline blood test. So if you are going to engage in some of these aggressive interventions, you got to get some at least basic blood tests done. We advocate a much more elaborate set so that we know as an individual, are you slowing or reversing your aging process? And then we can share that with the group. So an age management panel should consist of as many different tests as you can afford, frankly. This is what we're recommending for people who are undergoing NAD replacement and some of the other therapies that I'm going to talk about. You get as many blood tests done as you can as a baseline, and then once you're done with the different therapies, have that same test redone to see if it really worked. If we don't do this, we're going to be talking 10 or 20 years from now wondering what is effective and what is not. And some of the components of this blood test panel that we suggest involves thrombotic risk. Over the age of 50, an abnormal clot forming in an artery or a vein, leading cause of death, thrombosis over age 50. So we want to see what your thrombotic risk factors are ahead of time. If you are at risk, we'll get those taken care of ahead of time. We hate to see people experiment with an age reversal intervention and then throw a stroke or a heart attack because they didn't have their thrombotic risk factors measured. We want to know what your inflammatory status is. If it's too high, try to suppress it before you undergo the age reversal intervention. Just imagine you're putting in fresh young stem cells and your body literally is on fire due to chronic inflammation. Well, those stem cells, they're going to be destroyed. So if you can lower your inflammatory burden, it's more likely that the age reversal intervention is going to be more effective. And we're going to look at hormones. If you are not balancing your hormones and you're going to undergo an age reversal intervention, you reduce the probability of it working for you because your hormones are enabling your cells to talk to each other. And if you're out of hormone balance, you're going to have all kinds of problems. And as it relates to growth factors, well, we want to know where you are right now at baseline. When your growth factors are too low, your organs atrophy. You suffer sarcopenia. Your brain shrivels, literally. But there's a sweet spot, and we want to make sure you hit that sweet spot as it relates to insulin and IGF-1 with your age reversal program. We want to make sure that all happens. And of course, glycemic markers. Most of us have fasting insulin and sugar, blood glucose, and hemoglobin A1C. It's typically above what you want to be. I don't think people in this group are in that category, by the way. The typical American has fasting glucose way too high. And lipids, as it relates to cholesterol, triglycerides, important, but we're also looking at apolipoprotein B and small, dense LDL particles. We want you to do this again before you undergo the age reversal intervention so that you don't have a heart attack while you're undergoing therapy and perhaps blame it on the therapy. If you have high LDL, we'll lower it. It's not that hard to do. And a lot of these other issues can be corrected. Now, immune senescence, that's a little bit more challenging to reverse. But again, part of the age management blood test panel that we're suggesting is that you get the baseline for your immune markers, and then we can evaluate you afterwards to see if the intervention reversed immune senescence. We've had Dr. Maharaj talk at this church several times, and others, about the fact that if nothing else kills us, a defective immune system will. A defective immune system emits pro-inflammatory signals and at the same time fails to eradicate bacteria, viruses, and pre-malignant cells. We need to restore healthy immune function. And of course, we want to know what your kidney and liver function indicators are, because some people are going to present with some early signs of renal failure. Over age 60, a lot of people, they have kidney impairment. We're hoping some of these interventions will help reverse that. So these are some of the, let's see, I'll go back there, the cost of this outrageously expensive. The group that we put together, we've been able to get the price down to $695. But what I tell everybody is, if you've got good health insurance and you're seeing a doctor, he may be able to prescribe all these tests. And then it might be nothing. You may be able to get these tests done at no charge whatsoever. So we did get the cost down, but we also want to encourage people to try to get it done through their doctor at maybe low or no cost. So again, tragedy of lost data. If you fail to do a baseline blood test and you undergo some aggressive age reversal interventions, wow, have we lost data forever. We'll never be able to recapture where you were in the beginning. We'll know where you were afterwards, but we won't know where you were in the beginning. And again, going back to JAMA, this deals with the process of age reversal known as senolytics. Senolytic therapy, they selectively remove senescent cells from your body. As we grow older, we have certain cells that we would wish would just die. They linger, they emit chronic inflammatory signals, they do all kinds of damage, including secreting protein-degrading enzymes that literally eat away at our healthy cells. We need to purge our body of these dysfunctional senescent cells that really circumvent the ability of the regenerative therapies to have their full effect. And to give you an example of what these senescent cells are like, just imagine you have an uncle that you were maybe not particularly close to, but he only had 2 weeks to live, and he begged, "Can you please not let me die in an institution? Will you please let me die at home around some family members?" So you think, okay, 2 weeks, we will put ourselves out. We'll bring that sick uncle in there. He's vomiting, he's moaning, he's emitting all kind of terrible odors, but we're going to put up with it for 2 weeks. That sick uncle stays in your living room for 2 weeks, and it goes for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Your life is turned upside down. You really just want that individual to do what he's supposed to do. Instead, he lingers. And that's what's happening in your body with these accumulated senescent cells. They're spewing out pro-inflammatory cytokines. They're emitting these protein-degrading enzymes. They are killing you, literally. So getting rid of them is essential. Now, this study was published 2015. They took 2 compounds, a prescription drug called dasatinib and a dietary supplement you can buy anywhere called quercetin, and they gave them to old animals. Those rodents had a systemic reversal of their aging process merely by removing these senescent cells. That's all they had to do to derive all of those benefits. It really shows you how deadly and toxic these senescent cells are in our body. We need to get them out of our body, and CNN has been recognizing it with some media reports that it's time to start taking this animal research and trying it out on people. And even the federal government putting money into senolytic research. They want to see what happens when older people have their senescent cells eliminated, how much health span can be restored. This could spare Medicare from insolvency. Now, the popular press is picking up on these senescent cells by referring to them as zombie cells. And it's a very accurate depiction, because just one senescent cell in a group of healthy cells in a tissue, by emitting these metalloproteinases, these are these protein-degrading enzymes, well, they're killing your healthy cells. They're like reaching out and biting the healthy cell and then spewing out inflammatory factors. You need to purge your body of these senescent cells if we are going to achieve our objective of living to 2030, when CRISPR-Cas9 will solve the whole problem for us. We don't have to worry about taking dasatinib and quercetin and all of the other interventions. But right now, we're dealing with tourniquets, and we've got some really good tourniquets available to us. And again, the media is picking up on the fact that we need to do something about the senescent cell burden that anyone over the age of 30 or 40 is carrying with them, and it is shortening their healthy lifespan. This is a pioneer with the trial on metformin, where he is hoping to be able to show that metformin really does delay aging and improve health spans. And he's also advocating, well, maybe before metformin, we need to get rid of these senescent cells, because whatever benefit metformin derives, the senescent cells get in the way. And it's not just dasatinib and quercetin. Peptides and a number of different compounds are being developed to purge our body of senescent cells. And when that happens, they're seeing old animals grow biologically younger, including improvements in their kidney function, which is a real good measure of aging, because unfortunately a lot of us suffer kidney failure before everything else goes. Now, Unity has raised some big money to study senolytic drugs. This is spectacular, but they're not even starting their clinical trial yet. It's months away, and then it needs to go through the clinical trial process, the FDA approval process. We don't have that kind of time to wait. So we're advocating that people engage in a senolytic protocol right now. Remove your senescent cells before they kill you. And a study come out in July, it emphasized more than anything else how deadly these senescent cells are. They looked at younger mice who had senescent cells transplanted in their bodies, and it resulted in accelerated degenerative aging. And those senescent cells planted into young healthy mice, they spread rapidly throughout their bodies. And this is happening to our bodies right now if we don't get these senescent cells out. And when they implanted senescent cells into older mice, wow, what a horrible effect. The mice suffered the same kind of physical decline, and they died sooner. Now, if we were talking 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, we'd be looking at this data saying, wow, we cannot do anything about the fact we harbor senescent cells. We're just going to have to live with them as long as we can and drop dead. Great news, great news. The same study where they transplanted senescent cells into old mice, they then gave them dasatinib and quercetin. And what they were able to find is spectacular results. These are both normally aged mice with lots of senescent cells and aged mice with more of them injected, but by the dasatinib and quercetin being administered, they were able to alleviate the physical dysfunction and improve post-treatment survival by 36%. Wow, 36% longevity enhancements by using senolytic therapies. Time magazine picked up on this right after the study was published. And they made it very clear that if there's just one senescent cell amongst a group of 7,000 to 15,000 healthy cells, that one senescent cell initiates physical decline. That's all it takes. This is how toxic these cells are and why we need to remove them from our body. And then the LA Times did a more extensive article and brought out interesting tidbits from the study. And that is these old mice that were loaded with senescent cells normally, well, they were the human equivalent of 75 to 90 years of age. Hey, that's an age group that we can relate to. We're either at that age or getting close to it. And that means this therapy that works so well on mice could very well be applicable to people. 75 to 90-year-old people who remove their senescent cells. Now, the experts are very consistent in what they tell us. They're doing these studies, they're watching aging go in reverse in their animal model studies, and they tell us to wait. They tell us to wait till more data comes in before we self-experiment with these senolytic approaches. Well, you may know me pretty well. I don't wait. We move technology ahead, and we did a clinical trial on a group of people with severe bone-on-bone osteoarthritis. We chose that category of study subject because it was working very well in the animal models, and we could very quickly see, are these people getting better with their arthritis? And the incredible news is about 90% had relief of pain, improved joint mobility, and it lasted about 6 months. And then there was some more senescent cell accumulation, and they want to repeat it. We did baseline MRIs of their joints to look at their cartilage, and in December, we're going to have the follow-up. We're going to know, did those senolytics enable cartilage regeneration to occur? Symptomatically, it looks like it did. But again, we did the baseline, and we're going to do the follow-up to make sure that we're really seeing a result. This is the second time in history I've shown this particular chart. The first time was at RAADfest a couple weeks ago. This is the senolytic dosing protocol that we used in a clinical trial. And it's based on your weight. Dasatinib is a chemotherapy drug. That might frighten a lot of people away from using it. I'm going to explain why it shouldn't in the next couple of slides. But you have to dose it very carefully. And if a physician compounds this for you, we think you'll be able to buy it at a reasonable price from a compounding pharmacy. The price that it sells for to cancer patients is outrageous. So how do you get this drug? Well, if your doctor prescribes it, you can pay over $2,000 for what would be a 2-week supply. That's 2 doses over a 1-year situation. But if we get some cooperation from the compounding pharmacies that we're working with, we think you can get that for around $200. The drug itself is not that expensive as a raw material. It's just once it achieves that FDA-approved status and gets a brand name and they sell it to cancer patients, they overcharge. So we're hoping to have compounding pharmacies very soon make dasatinib available for around $200. And that would be basically a one-time-a-year treatment most of you would do. If you had osteoarthritis, you might do it 2 times a year. And this would be a very inexpensive therapy. And if you wonder, how does removing senescent cells from your joints alleviate or eliminate arthritis? How does that happen? Well, think about this. You've got these senescent cells in your joints that are emitting pro-inflammatory factors, and possibly worse than that, secreting these protein-degrading enzymes. So your joint cartilage is being destroyed by the accumulated burden of senescent cells. So you take the dasatinib quercetin, you kill off the senescent cells, macrophages clear them out, and then the inflammation and the protein degradation, well, that abates. And then our chondrocytes can restore joint cartilage. And if you want to take it a step further, which is part of our protocol, by the way, of reversing aging systemically, you could add NAD therapy. Because we've seen in clinical trials that we've done on NAD infusion that osteoarthritis seems to mitigate. We're seeing that consistently occur. And the reason that it does that is Whale SIR2 and 6 is necessary for the chondrocytes to replenish, and resveratrol and NAD, they boost SIR2 and 6. The senescent cells are removed with quercetin and dasatinib, and all of a sudden you've got a horrific osteoarthritis problem that may dissipate or go away completely. We are advocating physician supervision. We're amalgamating a list of physicians who will prescribe these medications and oversee you so you can do it safely. NAD, we've talked a lot about that in this church. The data keeps getting stronger, that this is a way to slow down, if not reverse aging. Time magazine covered it earlier this year. A prestigious researcher talked about the fact that when it's given to older mice, they act younger, behave younger, and they live longer. This is spectacular. And what David Sinclair talked about is that NAD may be the closest intervention we've gotten to a fountain of youth. And if we don't have any NAD in our body, we die. It's that simple. And the problem is, as we grow older, our NAD levels decrease. Now, vascular aging, major problem. Study done at Harvard showed that resveratrol and NAD replenishment, wow, reversal of vascular aging, improved circulation throughout our body. This is major. American Heart Association, just a couple months ago, comes out with a report indicating that they want to see NAD therapy experimented on in people with congestive heart failure. This kills a lot of Americans. 8 million suffer from it. And when we got credentialed people like the American Heart Association, this is absolutely spectacular. They're looking to put money into using NAD to repair our broken DNA. And that's the primary mechanism by which NAD works, by the way. Every day, our cells sustain breaks to our DNA, and NAD comes in and repairs that. Well, as our NAD levels go down, there's nothing there to repair our DNA. We literally die of pathological aging or something else because of an NAD deficiency. Now, these findings here relate to the decline in NAD levels that occur with aging. This is a lot of research that's been funded over the last 2 years, and it shows between 20 and 40, you're in good shape. You have a nice high level of NAD, and then between 40 and 60, it declines. But what happens after 60 is really scary. It can drop down to virtually 1 to 8 nanograms per milliliter. And at that stage, you are set for virtually every degenerative disorder out there. But these findings, by the way, some of them have been published recently, some of them have not yet been published. You're privileged to learn information that will be in a prestigious scientific journal soon. You're learning it right now. The fact is, if you're over the age of 40 to 50, you really need to restore your NAD. And this is how people are doing it. They're undergoing infusions of NAD and boosting it back up to what a young range was, and then they can keep going, keep the NAD high simply by using a dietary supplement called nicotinamide riboside. Now, some people think, well, why don't I just take a lot of the nicotinamide riboside capsules? It doesn't work for older people to get you to that youthful range. It will boost your levels, meaning it's good for you, but it's not going to get you from, let's say, 8 nanograms per microliter up to 40. It's just not going to do that. So our typical recommended dose is between 250 and 750 a day, and if that doesn't boost your NAD sufficiently, use an infusion or a patch that has to be prescribed by a doctor, and you have to go visit a doctor for this stuff. These are some of the inconveniences you may have to endure, but the benefits, wow, they're huge. Now, we know what happens when NAD levels plummet. We're talking about systemic aging and eventual premature death. This is what happens. But what I'm going to show you next are findings from a study. It's going to be published very soon, but this is pre-publication information of what happens when a group of older people, average age 79, in a poor state of health. These are typically metabolic syndrome patients, poor state of health. They underwent NAD infusions for about 6 to 7 consecutive days. And these were the type of benefits that they were able to see in the clinic that these people were able to benefit from by boosting their NAD using infusion therapy. This data here is only the second time it's been shown in public. It will appear in a medical journal, and it may open the world's eyes to the fact that in addition to senolytics, you want to boost your NAD if you want to remain young and healthy. So this is a little bit outdated right now. We're not suggesting people get their blood levels tested necessarily. If you're over age 50, you probably need to do something to get those NAD levels up to where you need to be. And what I emphasized everywhere I talk is the fact that a lot of us don't recognize that we're running out of time. I put age 64 up there because that's what I'm going to be very soon. That means I only have 20 years left. I've only got 20 years left to figure out this problem of biological aging and the degenerative diseases associated with it. And a lot of us have less time. So I'm advocating everywhere I go for accelerated age reversal research. Whatever we can do to accelerate the technology, we will live longer. And yes, the billionaires are putting big money into the research. Jeff Bezos is 54 years of age. He puts $1 billion a year, by the way, into space exploration. He's put less money into age reversal research. We applaud the billionaires for putting big money into age reversal research. They're virtually all doing it, by the way. All these Silicon Valley people who did the impossible with IT technology, they're looking at aging as just another problem to solve. And the problem is they don't have the sense of urgency that we do in this church. They are going to take their time with it because they figure they've got the time. We don't, and I don't feel that I have the time. So we want to accelerate all of this research. We want to put all of the different age reversal interventions that you've heard about, where we talked a lot about metformin and how important it was for you to take that prescription drug to slow your rate of aging. Well, that's pretty much accepted now. And what we want to do now is experiment with a number of other therapies and get a sequential order together so that no one has to needlessly suffer these types of consequences. And we do have people, by the way, contacting us saying, you know what, my mother now needs your services. And they've had like a massive stroke, or they've got sepsis. They've got like a couple days to live with the sepsis, and maybe a couple miserable years to live with the paralysis from the stroke. And we have to tell them, no, it's kind of too late for that. Some people try it anyway, but we're not telling people in nursing homes to utilize these technologies. We're advocating you take advantage of them now before you wind up into a condition when we cannot save your life. The media is putting George Church up there in a deity-type status because if his CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology works as well as it does at the cellular level, it does reverse aging in cells, by the way. It's doing some nice things in animals. If this works in people, aging will become a relic of the past, the same way cholera is in societies that practice good hygiene and have access to antibiotics. Aging will be something that you'll tell your kids about, and they'll wonder whatever motivated you to do anything if you're just going to age to death. And George Church is not the only person using CRISPR technology to induce stem cells, pluripotent stem cells, to rejuvenate our tissues systemically. Most of you understand how stem cells work. I'll briefly describe it. They produce somatic cells, which are the functional cells in our body. If we can turn our old functional cells back into induced pluripotent stem cells, that may be another way to achieve an indefinitely extended biological healthy lifespan. And scientists around the world are engaged in it. There is no upper longevity limit as to how long people can live. This study was published in Nature last year. A group of people got together and said, is there a reason why people can't live forever? And they said, well, not really. There's nothing that stands in the way, just a matter of advancing the technology. And again, Popular Science did a very nice article about me and all these scientists who are trying to make us live longer. And they singled me out because I'm a little bit different. I'm trying to get us to live indefinitely, forever. And the technology is moving in our favor. We just need to put the pieces together, and people are going to live a lot longer, a lot healthier, and they may not die. So again, this stair-step approach, which I presented at RAADfest, we were suggesting rapamycin be initiated first, but it turned out that virtually everyone at RAADfest had been on either metformin or calorie restriction, intermittent fasting. They were doing something to boost their AMPK, which then lowers excess mTOR. Most people have too much mTOR, causes cancer, causes obesity, creates all kinds of problems. So this stair-step approach is utilizing the age reversal interventions in a rational way to get us to that year 2030. That should enable us to reach the singularity when our neocortex merges with the cloud and we become immortal beings at our option. And I will take that option. I will say, yes, give me immortality. So again, media coverage with respected people talking about get to year 2050. Make it to 2050 and you may live forever. And our dilemma is that very few of us will live that long if we don't aggressively intervene. If people work together to solve a problem, it is much more likely to occur in our lifetime. Companies are being set up, by the way, to do the machine uploading, to transmit our brain into the cloud, so we truly will have that transhumanist ability to not ever have to die. We set up basically a new name. This used to be called the Society for the Rescue of Our Elders. It just wasn't catching on for some reason. So we changed the name to the Society for Age Reversal. It's a public benefit group. We don't accept donations. We don't get involved financially with anybody. What we simply do is try to track data. We encourage people to get their blood tested, send their blood tests to a new portal we'll soon have set up on our website, and then we know where you are baseline. And if you tell us you underwent NAD or senolytics or metformin, rapamycin, or young plasma, we'll be able to then see your follow-up results and then tabulate this in a way that we'll be able to gain real-world access to what people are doing to slow down and reverse their aging process. Again, we don't have any conflicts of interest because we don't take money, we don't invest in companies, and by that virtue, we're able to disseminate accurate, unbiased information. That is the website, Rescue Elders. It is being improved every single day. So if you log on to it and you don't find exactly what you want, log on to it in a week. You may find some very, very interesting information and opportunities. I set up a longevity fund to accelerate research, and I'm personally funding a lot of this research out of my own pocket, as are a few other philanthropists. But the big projects, we need big money. We're looking for people who have the net worth to put in the big money so we can accelerate all this technology even further. And for those who just like to write checks to a charity, this is a brand new charity we set up. It only funds human age reversal research. It does absolutely nothing else. So if people are looking for a tax deduction, they can write a check, any amount to this charity. It will only be used, again, for the purposes that I've stated. Human age reversal research. We've got 5,000 people who die every day in this country. We've got a lot of people that we can work with. So again, this is the website for people who want to stay informed about the availability of senolytics, availability of doctors who are prescribing NAD, the availability of rapamycin at a reasonable price, metformin, young plasma. This is all going to be talked about on the Rescue Elders site. It already has a lot of data. But what we do is if you register and we have your email address, we will update you. So that pretty much wraps up my talk, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from the crowd.
This concludes our special show for today. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.